Hello everybody, welcome back to Find My Past Live. My name is Ellie and happy Friday everybody. It is Friday and I'm so happy it is. It's the end of the week. We've got the weekend ahead of us and I'm really excited. My name is Ellie. I run social media for Find My Past. It is a job I absolutely love and I also get to connect with all of you at least once a week, so I just absolutely adore it. You are our online community. You are the beating heart of Find My Past. So welcome. Now, before I get started, I just need to make sure that I can see all my comments. So I'm just going to open that thread up just while you're all getting comfortable. I hope you've got a hot beverage of choice, you know, a plate of biscuits. I swear I'm not an enabler for, several biscuits on a Friday, but I think you should treat yourself every now and then, you know. Okay, so I'm just opening this up. Just bear with me a second. So I want to make sure I can see all of your comments. I'll just be a moment. There we go. I've got it up here. So we've got Kelly in already and we've got William as well. Fantastic. If you're new here, please do say hello in the comments. Introduce yourself. We don't bite. I don't bite. Nobody in the comments bites. Just sit back and relax. Yeah, if you are new here, we do these family history sessions twice a week. We do one midweek, which is normally an expert session or a Q&A. It might have a specific theme. And then on Friday, we do a more laid back session like this one. And we look at this week's new record releases and we usually pick a theme for this as well. And we have got a theme for this week, which is really exciting. Welcome back to all our regular viewers as well. It's fantastic to see so many of you coming back every week to listen to us talk about family history, and it means that we can all chat together, we can share tips, we can share tricks, we can share discoveries, we can share challenges. So it's just a chance for you guys to all connect with each other. Let's see who else we've got coming in. Comments coming in thick and fast. We've got Ivy, Rosie, Melody, Hillary. About to start raining in the Conway Valley. Yes, I think it might rain here as well, and I'm in a conservatory and I'm really hoping you don't hear the sound of the rain. I'm thinking I should have done this from somewhere else, but never mind, it's fine. Andrew saying, I hope my find is your family. Yes, so Andrew in the forum told me about a discovery he'd made recently in the 1851 census, and it might be my family and Andrew's family, and they may have been friends, but I need to work out if it's the correct branch of Rogers's. So we will watch this space. Basically, I'll get back to you on that one, Andrew. We've got Claire, we've got Jackie, Kelly, cold cider and a cheese sandwich. Excellent. We've got June from New Hampshire. We've got Victoria, Georgia, Virginia, Linda, Daphne, Ken, Anne, Donna, Elaine, Deirdre, Pat, Angie, Helen. Gosh, lots of you today. This is fantastic. Lovely. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? So we're going to have a look at this week's new records like we always do on a Friday. And what we're going to do is we're going to also have a look at question of the week. And if you've not got question of the week into me yet, the question of the week is, what is the oddest piece of advice that's been passed down to your family? I've had a couple through already. Get them in the comments if you haven't put them in already, and we'll have a quick discussion about those. And we're going to have a look at some history behind the Mayflower. And then to finish off, I'm going to look at some of your family photographs that you have kindly submitted to me. I did have, going through these photographs was just incredible, and going through the stories that you sent in behind them as well. And we'll come to this a little bit later on, but I prepared some slides for this, and I was testing the stream about an hour ago, and I tried hooking up my PowerPoint slides with Facebook, and then suddenly my computer crashed. And when I reopened my computer, the file with all the pictures on had been corrupted. So I couldn't open it. So then this past hour has just been me manically trying to recreate these slides for you all. So I have done it. Isn't technology wonderful when it works? And I didn't want gremlins today, but we've had gremlins anyway. Never mind, moving swiftly on. Another quick look at the comments before we move on. Let's have a look. We've got Patricia, we've got Cindy, Hillary conservatories can be very noisy when it rains. I know. We'll see. It'll be fine though. I mean, it's only sort of semi-grey overhead. We've got Roz as well. We've got Ken. He's got a question about the new Mayflower passenger list. Hopefully you will address this, but what is the specific provenance of the source of those records? Yeah, I am going to come on to this a little bit more. It's to do with the Mayflower Compact and all the information that's contained in there, but I will touch on that in a minute. We've got Ellen as well. Linda, can't wait to be back here with you all. James from Ireland. And Miko's put in his question of week answer as well. Got Sue and Sherry. Fantastic. Yeah, Claire saying, sounds like 2 hard drives are no longer working and some important photos were on them. It was the laptop itself that crashed, and it was just that one file that had the pictures that I'd put on the slides for today. It's just that one file I lost, thank goodness. It just, my laptop just didn't like it when I tried to do the slideshow test earlier. But it's fine now. I've since tested it and it's okay. Fingers crossed. So let's move on. Let's talk about what we've added to Find My Past this week. And if you are new here, if this is your first time, we do add new records to Find My Past every single week. So this means every week you have another chance to find a new ancestor or add somebody new to your family tree, which is really exciting because I think many of us who do family history as a regular hobby or even as a career, hitting a brick wall happens a lot. So the fact that we add more records every week means that you've got a new chance to go and break down this brick wall and find the answers that you're looking for. So in terms of what we've added this week, because it's the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower departing next week, we've added the Mayflower passengers from 1620. And these include the names and details of all those who sailed on the Mayflower. And as we spoke about a second ago, this information comes from the Mayflower Compact. And this was actually signed by all the men on board when they arrived in the New World. And it gives all the names of the pilgrims, their birth years, their places of birth, sometimes parents' names and spouses as well, depending on whether the person's a servant or not. Because what I've found when I've been exploring these, there's less information available if you were a servant. The handwriting on this document as well I found it quite easy to read in comparison with some other documents from sorts of, say, the 1620s. Many of you may know if you come across a parish record or a will and you try and read it, and it's actually quite difficult to read with the handwriting, but this was written so elegantly and it's now quite a historic document. So even if you don't have a connection to the Mayflower, do go and take a look. It's an incredible piece of history. So the next record set we've added is a brand new collection, and it's great if you've got migrating ancestors. It's our global immigrant guides, okay? So there's around 60 different guides that incorporate this collection. And you may not find your ancestor's name in these records, but if you know that they migrated, and you can always cross-reference with some passenger lists or passport applications or naturalization records, you should find plenty of context about their journey in these records, and they vary from migration to the United States or Canada or Australia. So go and take a look. They are fantastic. And an absolute shameless plug here. If you're interested in what life was like on board and you want to go and look at these guides, also check out my new blog, which is available on Find My Past, and it is about life on board a passenger ship. And one of the sources I used for that was a great diary that I found from, I think, the 1850s. And it was about a chap who was a reverend, and he sailed to Australia on a passenger ship. And it details, I think it's almost every day on board, including, I think, it was about a month, I think, they spent at sea. I say at sea. They couldn't leave the UK for a while because of, I can't exactly remember. It was something to do with either repairs or the weather, and they weren't able to sail fully. So they were actually on the ship for much longer than they needed to be. And you get a real sense of the Reverend's character from this diary as well. He was so concerned with the morality of especially the single men and women. Little bit overzealous with his advice to them. He documents that he took them to one side and gave them a stern talking to when they stepped out of line. But also, in addition to me finding it quite entertaining, I found the diary quite poignant as well, because it also recorded life and death on board. I think there was a death of a child at some point, and the effect the long journey had on the sort of the mentality of the passengers. So it's well worth the read. It's available on Google Books, and there's a link in the blog post if you want to go and have a look. So going back to the immigrant guys, so I've got myself sidetracked a little bit there. So take them with a little bit of a pinch of salt. I mean, I know we say this with most historical genealogy records. They're not exactly a representation of reality. I suppose a good way of explaining this might be, you know, on Instagram nowadays, when you've got a beautiful picture of I don't know, a dog posing, for example, and that's Instagram. And then you've also got reality, and the reality is the dog trying to go for the ball or trying to go for the treat, and you look sort of like this. I'm never going to do that again. So my point is, take them with a pinch of salt, but they are well worth the read, and they are so great for context for your migrating ancestors. And some of them are sort of guidebooks. I suppose that's the best way to describe them. Guidebooks that were created by the government or by shipping companies to try and encourage people to emigrate. So with that in mind, they might not be the best representation of reality. Now, I did pick out a few gems from the collection for you. So the first one was a practical guide for emigrants to North America. This was published in 1854 by a chap who had lived in North America for about 10 years. And what I found really interesting is that although it included things like how you should arrange your passage and the voyage and what it's like when you get to sort of Montreal and then into New York, he starts his guide off, this chap, with a list of who should go, who may go, and who shouldn't go. I don't know why I did that in a different accent. My apologies. That's sort of what I imagined when I was reading it, that you had this, I don't know, just a different accent. So there's also detail on things like what to expect from farming, from fishing, qualities of soil, because of course at this time, if you were going over, you know, this is 1854, if you were going over to the United States, you probably were going to, you needed to know how to feed yourself. Like farming was going to be really important. And there's even a page on the North Americans, sorry, not the North Americans, the Native Americans, the Native Americans. So I thought I'd read you some bits from this. So on those who ought to go, America being a growing country and a land for labor and industry, the poor industrious laboring man with a wife and 2, 3 or more sons and daughters fit for labor and of sober habit would do well to emigrate. Sober habits are indispensable, for otherwise spirits and beer are so cheap in America, in fact good whiskey being only 1 shilling per gallon, as to induce a gradual but ruinous tendency. So there you have it. If you're hardworking and you're not afraid of, you know, a hard day's work, so to speak, then America is the land for you, my friends. I'm sure they didn't say exactly that in the 1850s, but c'est la vie. And in terms of who should not go, or who ought not to go, as this chap phrased it, he says, those who can get anything from a good living at home. The poor gentleman, the idler, the tippler, these and similar characters are very unfit subjects for emigration to America, or in fact, any country where labor and industry are only guarantees to success. So that's his opinion. So if you don't want to work, don't go to America in the 1850s, which I'm pretty sure is actually quite sage advice, because I think life might have been quite tricky, you know, going over there and having to start a life anew and things like that. So I think that's quite good advice. And I found another guide for you, and this is called Shall I Try Australia? ? This was written by George Lakin James. It was published in London in 1892, so it's a little bit later. And it goes into detail about what Sydney is like, the availability of certain foods, the liquor trade, the railways, the scenery. And I did pick out a little quote for you. And this is, although day by day, Almost something is being done to render ocean travel, if possible, more speedy and more luxurious, and it may be added, less expensive. It is even yet somewhat of a far cry to Australia, and is less known, I'm inclined to think, that the English people generally about the country and its resources is excusable in these present days of progress. Yes, I know that's a very long-winded sentence. And if I'm being honest, most of the guide itself is long sentences like this. So he's basically saying there that, can you believe that nowadays it's cheaper, it's more comfortable, it's more luxurious to go to Australia? So he's selling it basically. And if you go and read my Life on Board blog post, you'll see that reality was, life at sea could be quite trying, cramped conditions, depending on what class you were in as well. Like if you were in steerage, it could be quite dark. And I think there was one point in the Reverend's diary that I was reading, and at one point there was steerage, I think, had flooded, and a lot of the steerage berths were really badly damaged, and they were, people were basically sitting around in damp clothes and sleeping in with, a damp blanket. And I just think that would have been awful, absolutely awful. Anyway, so I suppose these guys are sort of a 19th century equivalent to, looking up a place on TripAdvisor nowadays. Because if you think about it, photography wasn't widely used at this point, and one of the only ways a potential migrant would have been able to learn more about their new home is with a guide like this. And I'd also imagine that, most people would have wanted to know what to expect when they arrived. But I still maintain my point that I think some of these guidebooks, in fact, probably a lot of them, twisted the truth ever so slightly. Right, water before we move on. Stay hydrated, everybody. Okay, so in terms of the next editions this week, we'll move on to newspapers. So we've added a brand new title called The Gentlewoman. It is a brilliant illustrated title that was first published in 1890. It includes stories from Bram Stoker and Arthur Conan Doyle. And despite it including a lot of advertising, many of the adverts are actually for fashion pieces. So if you're interested in the history of fashion, this is going to be a great newspaper for you to go and have a look at. And it was actually, this newspaper was against the tight lacing of corsets. And it actually wrote several pieces against it, while also publishing adverts for corsets. And some of the illustrations on these adverts made me actually physically sick to look at, because you've got waists that are literally like that. And I'm just like, who looks like that in reality? I don't know. But anyway, fantastic newspaper. Go and take a look. We've added 1890 to 1895, and then 1897 to 1915. And in 1926, the Gentlewoman merged with Eve, and then that became Britannia and Eve later on. And then we've also added more pages for the Cork Daily Herald, the Fleetwood Chronicle, and also the Boston Guardian. So that wraps up nicely all of the new records that you have got to explore this weekend, if you've got some time. Sit down with a coffee and biscuits. I'm talking about biscuits again. I've clearly got biscuits on my mind. My apologies, everybody. If you go and get a biscuit now, then you can blame me. I think you should, you should treat yourself, as I said. All right, let's have another look at the comments here before we move on, because I want to talk about the Mayflower a little bit, and then we'll do family photos. I'm so excited for this. I love family photos, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so who have we got here? Beth saying she's from Anglesey. Hello, Beth. I love Anglesey very much. Who else have we got here? Rita from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Paul saying, missed last week, ill again. I hope you're feeling better, Paul. We miss you when you're not here. Good to see you back. Sorry, this is what happens when I talk for ages. I just get so parched. Lucy saying hello. Hello, Lucy. We've got Miko in the comments as well. Oh, and Alex is also monitoring comments today, so make sure you say hello to him. Beth saying, I've got a lot of family members who migrated across the world or travelled between various places. Excuse me. I actually don't have many of them in my family tree. I think most of them sort of stayed put. I have found distant overthrows who migrated over to the United States, and I'm sure some of them went to Australia as well, but not many. Like, I think most people have quite a lot of migrating ancestors in their family tree. Linda saying, oops, late again. Sorry, Ellie. It's fine, honestly. I know you're all really busy and it's fine. Just pleased that you can all come and join. So not a problem. Sorry, I'm just reading through so many of these. Patricia saying to Linda, you are in detention this evening with the lines, I must not be late. Who remembers that? Hands up. Who remembers lines in detention? Anya, also late. You're in detention on lines as well. I'm kidding, by the way, in case you haven't wondered by the smile. I am, of course, joking. Yes, a couple of responses to question of the day as well. I've got so many comments to go through here. I'm going to have to leave them because I need to move on because we're already at 20 past. Goodness gracious me. So let's talk about, in fact, we'll do question of the week before we do Mayflower. So the question of the week, just to remind you, is what is the oddest piece of advice that has been passed down to you by your family or through your family? So I had a couple of these in already. So Sue said, as children, we were asked where something was and the parents didn't know. They would always say, up in Nanny's room behind the soap dish. I don't know if this is classed as advice. It's not, but it's sort of a saying that's been passed down to you. I think a similar thing would for me would be like the television remote, and we would call that, I think we called it a doobry, and I think my friend's family called it the buttons, which I've never understood, but I always thought it was quite sweet. And one from me, I thought I'd share one from me as in terms of a piece of advice. I've got naturally curly hair, and my grandmother would always say to me, do not go to bed or go outside with wet hair, which is really difficult for somebody with naturally curly hair because you just want to leave the curls to dry. So she's always told me that, and she's always said, you know, I'll catch my death if I don't, you know, dry my hair before I go to bed, but I'm still here. I'm sure there is some truth behind that, and you know, I know she means well, but yeah. So that's mine. And William shared a memory. He said in 2008 or 9, when I was looking at a family story about someone dying on HMS Hood, my granddad said he thought his brother's middle name was George. Now, when solving an Evans brick wall, that random memory came back to me, and instantly that helped, as William says he had 2 people of the right age with that name, and then that memory unlocked that brick wall, and then William was able then to get in touch with relatives he never knew he had, which is amazing. The power of memory is really strong, and I know we always say memories can be fallible and you need to go and check them with, you know, the facts, but then historical records can be slightly wrong as well. So it's just a matter of looking at all of the evidence and making an informed decision. And then Andrew was talking about items that have passed down the family. So he says, I know of a Bible in Canada belonging to my 5 times great grandmother, Sarah, that's still in existence, and also a pair of earrings belonging to Sarah's daughter, who is now in Canada. That's just amazing. A Bible from your 5 times great grandmother. That is an incredible piece of your family history there. So let's go and have a look at some more answers to question of the week in the comments. And unfortunately, I have lost some of them because Facebook is only showing me so many. So my apologies if I miss anybody. So Georgia says, my nan and my mum said, don't put new shoes on the table, it's unlucky. Do you know what? The same thing in my family. And to this day, it's don't put new shoes on the table. And I remember actually getting a pair of new boots when I was I must have been about 11 or 12. And I put them on the table at my grandmother's house. I'm pretty sure she wiped them off the table. But yeah, superstition is a powerful thing, my friends. What else have we got here? I'm still scrolling. It's amazing that you guys are all chatting amongst each other. We're talking about gossiping. I like a little bit of gossip, you know, as much as the next person. Stuart's commented, every single time I put a name in, I get nothing, even tried myself, and no records. Why is that? I'll tangent this for a second, Stuart, just to give you a couple of tips. So best place to start is nice and broad. So don't add in too much information into your search to begin with, because records might be recorded differently to how you might expect. A good example of this is the civil registration records. So, you know, you might know that you were born at a certain place, but in terms of how it's recorded on a registration document, it would have been recorded as the registration district, not the actual town you were born in most of the time. So that's just one example. What other advice can I give you? That's definitely a good one. So start broad, speak to your family members as well. And if you're really stuck, there's loads of blog guides available on Find My Past, and you can also come and chat to us in the Find My Past forum as well. There are lots of people on there who are fantastic at helping people with brick walls. So that is the other place to try, Stu. And hopefully, if Alex is listening, he can pop a link to the Find My Past forum in the comments. Oh, look, Linda helping as well. Thanks, Linda. And William. This is what I mean. Like, you all help each other, and it's just amazing. Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps. And before I, get too mushy, I'm going to move on. So Andrew's saying, I have an ancestor who went pre-1850 to New York, and because of him, we now have blocks of ice cream. That's amazing. Funny story, actually. When I was about 2 or 3 years old, I was a really, really fussy eater, and I had to be forced to try ice cream because I was convinced, the precocious little child that I was, that I didn't like ice cream. But yeah, just a side story there. Right, I'm just scrolling down for some more question of the week adverts. Still scrolling. Beth saying, I love family photos as it can reveal personality traits. Absolutely, and I'll come on to this in a minute. Can't get ahead of myself. Excuse me. A little bit of a frog in my throat today. Sorry, I'm still scrolling. Scrolling. Lots of comments. Victoria saying, was told the same about hair. It's amazing, these little, I don't want to say old wives' tales, because I think some of them do have a ring of truth to them, and especially going back, say, 100, 200 years, I'm sure going to bed with wet hair actually could have killed you, because you could have caught a chill, and then there wouldn't have been modern day medicine to, bring down a fever or something like that. So it does have a ring of truth. Patricia saying she calls a remote control the bleeper. That is a new one. I've not heard that one before. Best advice was learning how to swim, as my grandpa's ability to swim helped save his life. It meant that my mum, myself, and my children learned how to swim. Yes, that is brilliant, Beth. Thank you for sharing that. Rosie saying, my grandmother's two pieces of advice, sort of. You can always stoop low and pick up nothing. Regarding choosing a partner, I like that one. And if one man's not enough, 20's not too many, in regards to ladies who are a bit flighty. This was early 1900s. I love those pieces of advice. Those are brilliant. Roz saying, my grandmother used to say, a place for everything and everything in its place. Amanda, don't stand under an elder tree, especially at dusk. Sherry, no elbows on the dinner table. Do you know, even today, if I put my elbows on the dinner table, I immediately go, I'm not supposed to be doing that. Lynn, be careful if a bird flies into a window. It could signal death coming. Not heard that one before. Tracy, I still don't put new shoes on the table. Ian, don't open an umbrella indoors. Again, that goes back to superstition, doesn't it? Sherry, children should be seen and not heard. Do you know what? When I was younger, I wasn't allowed, the children in the family, we weren't allowed to sit with the adults. And I always thought that was such a shame, because I absolutely hero worshipped like my aunts and uncles and my parents. So not being able to sit with them and chat to them was actually a bit rubbish. I don't know if anybody else feels the same. Fenella, never bring lilac indoors. And if you hear a ticking spider, somebody is going to die. But Fenella does say, I've no idea what a ticking spider is. No, I don't think I do either. Maybe we should, does anybody know what a ticking spider is? If you do, pop it in the comments. Patricia, what's for tea? 3 knocks on the pantry door. My Yorkshire dad has always said that. Oh, I love that. Right, I'm going to have to move on because of time. So we're going to talk about the Mayflower next, and then we'll move on to family photos before we finish up. So next week on the 16th of September is going to be 400 years in the new calendar since the good ship Mayflower set sail from Plymouth for the New World. And, you know, with COVID striking and the current circumstances, a lot of events were planned for this, but of course, not a lot of them are going to be able to take place, which is a real shame, but we can still mark the occasion in any case. Because it's such a pivotal moment in history. I think for many Americans in particular, but also for Native Americans as well, and you know the effect the arrival of the colonists had on the Native Americans' way of life, and also of the descendants of everybody involved as well. This is an estimate, but it's said that there's around 30 million people who can trace their ancestors back to a Mayflower pilgrim or somebody who sailed on the Mayflower, because they weren't all pilgrims, which I just think is incredible. 30 million people. I mean, granted, it was 400 years ago, but that's still an astounding number of people. In fact, one of these particular Mayflower descendants is I don't want to spoil this because there's a blog coming on this next week. One of my colleagues, shall we say, has a Mayflower connection, and there will be a blog coming out hopefully next week. I think it's scheduled for next week about this, so make sure that you look out for that. So as I said, a lot of the passengers were pilgrims. They weren't actually known as pilgrims back then. This was a phrase that was coined much later. They actually called themselves saints, and they were very religious, and they were seeking religious freedom away from the Church of England. And then you've got others who came as servants, others who just wanted a better life, and these were usually tradesmen. There were around, I think, 102 passengers, and then about 30 crew, I believe. And if you, I think you need to understand, we need to understand the context behind why the Mayflower was so pivotal, and also why this happened in the first place, why people left England and wanted to go and start a brand new life all the way across an ocean. And it really comes back to that sense of religious freedom again. So even if you go back even further with Henry VIII, he broke with the Catholic Church and he established a new church in the Church of England. But there were some people who thought that they wanted to get rid of all Catholic practices. They saw the Catholic Church as quite evil, and these became the Puritans. And then on the back of this, there were people who thought that it was better to break entirely from the existing church rather than try and change or reform what was already there. So these were known as the separatists. And remember as well, this is a time when religious persecution was rife. People were burnt at the stake for not having the same opinion on the Eucharist or Holy Communion, okay? So just keep that in the back of your mind when researching or looking into the history of Mayflower. So a lot of these people, a lot of these separatists and Puritans as well, they would be worshipping is the word I was looking for, worshipping in secret, and it was under the threat of arrest as well. So some of these separatists actually escaped to Holland in around, I think it was 1607, and the first time they tried, they were actually betrayed by the ship's captain and they were arrested. So when they tried second time round, they went to Holland, which was considered much more tolerant and much more free thinking. So they started a new life there, but after some years and some deliberation, they found that their children were being brought up in a way that they didn't want them to be brought up, and because there was a war with Spain coming as well, and they were afraid that Spain might start imposing its Catholicism. So they decided, right, we need to go somewhere brand new. So they planned to go to America, and they hired two ships for the purpose. They hired Speedwell, which was going to carry the passengers from Holland, and then the Mayflower, which was going to carry passengers who weren't going for religious reasons. So they had two ships. And Speedwell left Holland in July of 1620, and it was going to meet Mayflower in Southampton. And then both of the ships left in August, but it soon became very apparent that Speedwell wasn't seaworthy. She was springing leaks, so they had to head back to England for repairs. They first did them, they did the repairs at Plymouth, and then they decided that Speedwell was just not fit for the journey. So what happened was some of the passengers decided not to go at all, and then everybody else, so the 102 passengers and the 30 crew, they all boarded the Mayflower, and they departed on the 16th of September. Well, it's 16th of September in new calendar. In the old calendar, it's the 6th of September, just in case you're confused there. So the journey wasn't wonderful, looking back at the records that survive. And because of the delay, because they set sail in September and not in August, they were crossing the Atlantic in the storm season. So seasickness was rife, the waves were huge. So they had really awful bad weather. And the journey took them 66 days. And they had wanted to go to Northern Virginia, and they didn't end up there at all. They actually spotted Cape Cod on the 19th of November. And then rather than risk the journey on the ship to go to their intended destination, they stayed put. And they actually spent, I think most of them spent their first winter aboard the Mayflower because it was just too cold for them, really. And I think conditions were bad. But what they did as well, they signed the Mayflower Compact, or all the men on board signed the Mayflower Compact, which was mainly to know how to deal with voting issues and ruling by the majority. And they did this on the 21st of November in the new calendar. And then they began exploring. They came across some abandoned villages. And it turns out that with those abandoned villages, excuse me, in the years before the Mayflower had arrived, the effects of colonization on the Native Americans had already taken its toll. Some of these villages had mass graves in them, and it was European diseases that were just ravaging these villages. So yeah, that is the story of the Mayflower. And I think it's a fascinating story. And if you do have a connection to the Mayflower, let me know, pop it in the comments. I want to hear about it. So before we move on, because we're going to look at family photos now, I'm so excited for this, it's unreal. Let's go and have another quick look at the comments, because we're already on 22, and I wanted to spend quite a bit of time talking about photos. So Fenella saying, enigmatic saying in the family, red hat, no drawers. Is that going without underwear? I don't know, that's just a guess. Kelly's saying, question of the day, a lot of people tell kids not to ask questions. So my mum's advice would be to ask questions, even if you don't understand something, ask. And do you know what? That is so true. I think maybe some of us are not confident enough saying, admitting that we don't understand something, but there's no shame in that. There's no shame in asking for help, especially with family history. If you've hit a brick wall, maybe ask somebody else to have a look for you. And another pair of eyes is great, because somebody else might see something that you have missed, like a really key clue. So I think that's a great tip. June saying she's a Mayflower descendant. That's amazing. I just think that's incredible. Okay, I'm just going to scroll back up to make sure I've not missed anything. Oh, apparently it's Caroline's birthday. Happy birthday, Caroline. Many returns of the day. Okay, scrolling. Yeah, sorry, there's just so much to go through. Anya saying, I think your colleague may have messaged that she descends from a Mayflower passenger in a previous chat. It's actually a different colleague. If we're talking about the same one, it's a different colleague, and I don't think we've spoken about this before. So, but we'll soon see. Okay, yeah. So right, we'll scroll on. This is what happens when I'm scrolling through so many comments. We'll move on. So what we're going to look at next are your family photographs. So you may remember a couple of weeks ago, I was showing you some photographs from my dad's side of the family of my grandfather, his parents, and also my nana and her parents. And some of them I've never seen before. And I just think there's something really special about coming across a photograph, and in that photograph, it is the first time that you've come face to face with your ancestor or even your relative. I never knew my grandfather. You know, he died when my dad was two years old. So I never knew him. So I've only known him through family stories and photographs. So these are really special to me. And I know many of you at home feel the same way about some of your photographs, which will become very evident when I share them. So thank you to everybody who submitted one. I smiled when I read some of these. I laughed. I teared up a little bit. I got goosebumps. There's some lovely stories. So let's get on to those now. So I'm just going to go and share my screen. Bear with me a second. So we want to share the PowerPoint, which is there. Okay, so I think we've got it. Lovely. Okay, so let's move on to these. Let's click through them. So the first one we've got is Lynn's second great aunt. Okay, this is Bridget Gannon. This was taken around 1865 in New York City, and Lynn's been researching her second time's great grandmother Maria, because Bridget and Maria had emigrated from County Roscommon in Ireland, and Lynn's been tracing Maria and her husband, that should say husband, not husbands, my apologies, that's a typo, in Texas, because he was stationed at army posts in the 1850s. And the interesting thing here is that until last year, Lynn hadn't found any of Bridget's descendants. And then she came across one, and then the descendants gave Lynn this fabulous studio portrait. And the fashions are just gorgeous. And look how her hair's done. Look how she's posing, like sort of really casually. She's so sort of serene. I just love this photograph. So thank you, Lynn, for submitting that. And the next one is Sue's 3 times great grandfather. And the interesting thing here is that he looks so much like Sue's brother, Neil. And Neil did say that his photograph could be shared for this. So thank you, Neil. So this is Reverend Charles Thompson. He was a minister of the Free Church in Wick in Scotland. And Sue came across this photo on the Caithness website. And there is a real resemblance there. And I know I was talking about this last time about family resemblances and photographs. I'd love to see more like this. If you've got a photo and you think, wow, that person looks like me, or looks like my sister, or looks like my daughter, I would really like to see them. I love historical photographs. I cannot say this enough. There is just something about them. I mean, in particular, if it's one of your ancestors. I could go on about that for the rest of time. So the next photograph we've got is of William's 2 times great grandmother. This is Sarah Ann Mather, born Taylor in 1858. And she was a member of the Wardle family of Leek in Staffordshire, and they were well-known silk dyers. And they even collaborated, this family, with William Morris, the famous designer. And I just think this is a fantastic portrait. I love the high collar that she's wearing. I love the brooch that she's got, and even the glasses as well. And she just looks so happy. If you can hear meowing in the background, my apologies. It's my cat wanting attention, but we'll just ignore him for now. He might jump up, but we'll just, it's all right. He's not coming over. Moving on. So these are Paul's ancestors. Thank you, Paul, for submitting these. He submitted 2. So the one on the left is Paul's great-grandfather, John Bennett. He was born in 1855. And this photo was given to him by a cousin. And it's the only photograph of a relative born this early in Paul's tree. And I just think that's amazing. Photographs that go back decades and decades in time, even to when photography first came into being. I just think that there's something so special about those. And then on the right-hand side, you've got Paul's great aunt and uncle, and they were John's children. You've got Margaret, born in 1875, and then George Vernon Bennett, born in 1889. Now, sadly, George was killed in action on the Somme in 1916. And this was quite poignant, actually, Paul, when you submitted this. He said it was actually Margaret's diary that he was reading that alerted him to George's existence. Paul didn't know that George existed before this. And then when a cousin was rooting around in some old family photos, they found this. And it was the first time that they had laid eyes on George, who would otherwise have been lost to history were it not for this diary. So I just thought that was really poignant. Thank you for sharing these, Paul. And then this was quite poignant as well. I think this is a beautiful family photograph, but there is quite a sad tale behind it. So thank you, Kim, for submitting this. This is Kim's great grandmother. So Jane Riley with her children, Agnes, Mena, my apologies, Kim, if I'm mispronouncing that. That's your grandmother, Tom, Fred, Gertie, and Evelyn. And it was taken around 1915 in Preston in Lancashire. And since looking at this photograph, Kim has discovered that Jane actually outlived her husband, 7 children and 5 grandchildren. And in fact, 2 of the children born, 2 children born after this photograph. And I think one of them in this actually died shortly after, which is very, very sad. And they all died from quite a few various things, if I remember from reading your email, Kim. And unfortunately, Jane's husband was quite abusive, and he was quite often away from home. And Fred, who is pictured in that, when he was a little bit older, he destroyed all the evidence of his father, because they must have just had a nasty experience, I suppose. However, Kim did go on to say that she remembered the house, her mum remembered the house as a happy place despite all of this. So thank you, Kim, for submitting that. And then Sylvia, I absolutely love this picture, and I can see why you love it as well. So this is the last photograph of Sylvia's mum, May, and it was taken in 1972. And it was a day out. So Sylvia's aunt and uncle didn't have a car, so Sylvia's parents would take them on day trips. And this photograph was taken by Sylvia's dad. And you've got her mum at the top. You've got Sylvia's brother Martin, cousin Ruth, Uncle Fred, and then Aunt Joan at the foot of the tower as well. And I just think that's so special. I can see why you treasure that. So thank you so much for sharing it. And then we've got this fantastic group family photo. And this is sent in by Rita of her father's family, possibly in New Jersey at the beach. And the reason this is so special to Rita is because this family hardly ever posed for group photographs. And Rita said this never even happened at weddings. So this was a really rare occurrence. And this is why she treasures it so much. So you've got her father, Bill, her great grandfather, Elmer, Uncle Tom, Aunt Lorraine, Uncle Ed, Ed's wife, Dorothy, Aunt Anna May, Uncle Joe, Uncle Harry, and cousin Rita. And Rita also said that there are still a few people in that photograph she's still yet to identify. So if it's familiar to you, if there's a familiar face, reach out to Rita. Maybe you've got a connection there. And the next one is from Denise. So Denise first saw this photograph around 3 years ago. And sadly, although she had a good relationship with her grandfather, her grandmother had passed away when her father was only 9 years old. So Denise never knew her grandmother, which is really quite sad. And Denise actually said that her grandmother was the love of her grandfather's life. And it was just so sad to hear that she'd been taken from the family so too soon, basically. Denise said it was taken around the time of their marriage in 1900, and she'd never seen this photograph before. And beforehand, she'd never seen what her grandmother looked like and never even knew her name. And I thought it was important to include her name on this, Annie Maria Grenfell Wilson. She is not forgotten. She's still alive and well in you, Denise, without getting too soppy. And Denise also said to me that she'd shared this, the first time she saw this, she got really emotional and she cried a little bit. I would have done exactly the same. I'm getting emotional just now, just talking about your story. So she shared this with her daughter and her grandchildren. So she said it was so emotional to be able to share the image of her grandmother, who she never knew, with her grandchildren. So thank you so much, Denise, for that. This photograph is amazing. Considering some family photographs you come across, they can be quite posed, whereas this is just so natural. It's clearly sort of a candid moment, I think, where somebody's just gone, oh, let's all gather around for a photograph. So this is Anne's grandfather, George Edward Brittle, with his parents and his siblings. And it was the first time when she saw this photograph that Anne had seen the faces of her great-grandparents and a younger version of her grandfather. And Anne's got it hanging in her hallway, and it makes her really happy every time she passes it, because They're clearly having a good time, and that makes me really happy as well. I think the last one I've got is one from our very own Jen Baldwin. Thank you, Jen. I hope you're listening. This is Jen's grandmother, and this was taken when she was in high school. And Jen absolutely loves the clothes she's wearing, in particular those very stylish boots. I want a pair of those, please, Jen. And it's particularly special to Jen because it was her grandmother who got her started in family history. So there we go. Right, I think that's all the photographs, so I'm going to stop sharing. Brilliant. Okay, so I think that comes nicely to the end of our photograph segment. Thank you for sharing your touching, poignant stories with us. We've been able to share those today. I was going to add a photograph, another different photograph of my grandfather on, but because I lost the slides and then had to remake them, I didn't have time to add him back in, I'm afraid. So thank you so much, everybody, for those photographs. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like to maybe do this again with some other photographs, let me know, and we can maybe organise that. I do have a cat coming to say hello, so my apologies if she walks in front of the screen. This is a different cat to the one who's meowing a moment ago. She's not, she's walking behind the screen, it's fine. So yeah, let me know if you want to do this again. So let's have a scroll through the comments and see what you guys thought of the photograph, shall we? Okay, yes, I've got the cat coming to say hello. This is Dusty, everybody. She was the runt of the litter, and she's now about 12, I think. I'm going to move her in just in case she steps on something. Okay. Beth saying, my eldest, my mum, and my great grandma all have the side profile. I think that does happen. And then Karen saying, what an amazing picture to have, Lynn. I know, isn't it beautiful? Lynn saying, thank you for showing my photograph. No, thank you to you for submitting it. Like, I know not everybody would be comfortable sharing these photographs and stories, so I really appreciate it. So thank you. Andrew saying, although I was 3 when he died, I was poorly during most of my early life. My profile picture is my dad's parents in the late 1960s. Josh saying, how do people find photographs of your ancestors? I think the best place to start, Josh, is to go and speak to your older relatives and your family members. From personal experience, I remember going to my great grandmother's on my mum's side a lot when I was younger, and I remember her having fantastic photographs of women in massive Victorian and Edwardian hats and beautiful clothes. And I have asked my grandma time and time again for these photographs, and she still hasn't given them to me. I don't know. Maybe she just doesn't want to share them. Maybe she's lost them. I don't know. And then in terms of the photographs I shared last time I did Friday's Live, these were photographs that had been hidden away amongst my late father's things, and I hadn't seen many of them until 2 weeks ago. So it was really, really good for me to be able to share them with you. Claire saying, unfortunately, I didn't get a photo submitted as I couldn't decide. If anybody wants to do this again, I'm opening up the doors. Email me with your photograph, the photograph you treasure, and the story, and how they're related to you at community@findmypast.com. And if Alex could pop that email address into the comments, I would be very grateful. And we will do this again in a couple of weeks' time, because I think you guys have all enjoyed it. William saying, show the cat. I don't know where she's gone now. She was behind me a second ago, but I think she's gone off in a huff. Right, what time are we on? Right, we're 5 minutes to. I'm going to finish reading these comments because then I'm going to have to let you all go. No, she's coming back. She's coming back. Lynn saying she loves the photograph as well. Dress and hair so representative of the era. Exactly. Victoria saying it would be amazing if Denise could colorize the photo, as you might see some more details, for example, the jewelry. Yeah, exactly. Anya saying, I've got photocopies of photos of family which are a bit blurry, but they're great ones of family parties with accordions. I love that. Sherry saying she's enjoyed this very much. Vanilla saying, yes, more photographs. Sharon saying she'd like to share a photo next time. And Donna as well. Anya saying hi to Dusty. Yeah, we'll do another one. So if you want to submit a photo, community@findmypast.com, that will come straight to me, and we will do another session on this. And hopefully my slides won't get corrupted this time, and I won't have to remake the slides an hour before I go live. I like to prepare well in advance for these sessions, and I did not feel prepared with that happening to me today. Lovely. Okay, so I think that we'll leave it there for the week. Next week, you are hearing this first, we have 2 very exciting returning guests coming next week. We're going to be doing a house history panel on Tuesday, featuring me, featuring Alex, and featuring 2 special guests, returning guests. No, I'm just going to tell you because you guys are here and you guys should be able to get a heads up on what's happening next week first. So we've got a House Through Time researchers, Deborah Sugg-Ryan and Melanie Back-Hansen, returning next week. They will be joining myself and Alex for a very special live session on house history on Tuesday. So very excited for that. We've also got on Wednesday, Jen's going to be doing a session on crossing the pond with family history. And then good old Alex, who is still in the comments, will be back on Friday for Friday's Live. Brilliant. So I think we will leave it there. Let's say bye to everybody. Thank you for sharing photos. You're welcome. Oh, so many of you in the comments that actually submitted photos as well. I love this. I love that you could still tune in and see me share them. Oh, I love it. Oh, yeah, email address in the comments. Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. Lovely. Okay. Lucy asked me, my photos damaged by moisture, can they be repaired? See if you can find a photo restoration expert. That you usually have them locally, especially with antiques dealers. So give that a go, because it's always worth trying to repair them if you can. Yeah, thank you very much, Helen. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Anya. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Ivy. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Cindy. Thanks, Georgia. Lots of you. Brilliant. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Relax, and we will catch you, Alex and I, on Tuesday. So take care of yourself and all the best. Bye.